Hello, I'm Erin, and if you have found your way to my channel and this video, this is a place where I do spiritual awakening talk and guidance, light language activations, guided self healing videos with flower frequencies. I know. So that's what you're going to find. If you're here and you like any of those things, you are in the right place. Pull up a chair, grab your favorite drink, and let's go. In this video, I'm going to talk about the part two, which is really the biggest part for me of my spiritual awakening. So I'll ease into that with the beginning of 2018, which for me was the first 4 months of that was just an absolute shit show. My body was breaking down on me. And I think it's important to talk about the physical ascension symptoms. A lot of people think that they're just going to glow with light and ascend. And no, you might be glowing with light, but every time you get a big infusion of light and you raise in your vibration, you're going to have to, detox and go through a period of shadow where you are releasing the dense frequencies that you can't take with you anymore. You're literally changing into a different vibration, a different being. Your reality is shifting. And so those old realities that contained really dense energy, really dense vibrations and frequencies are going to have to fall away, but they must come through you. They must come through the body, through the human experience, through the emotions, all of that. So that's why people call it the dark night of the soul or shadow work, is as you are expanding in your light quotient, they actually have to pass through you as the portal. So, and I was a portal for some pretty dank stuff back then. And 2018, I started having really severe heart palpitations. My heart chakra was trying to expand and I didn't understand what was going on. I went to the doctor to have an EKG done. I just thought that maybe I was having little heart attacks or something. It felt like someone reaching through my chest cavity and jiggling my heart back and forth, up and down, and it would last for about 8 to 10 seconds. And my anxiety would ramp up to a panic while it was happening because I thought I was dying. And I wasn't. I've since come to know that that is a symptom of the heart chakra expanding. Of course, the doctors didn't find anything wrong with me. They said that I was like the healthiest person for my age, blah, blah, blah. But I knew there was something up. So I got sent to my regular practitioner where I was diagnosed with anxiety and given Xanax. Thanks for the Xanax. Okay, so I had the EKG, it was fine. I went to an allergist because my body was allergic to me, to the thoughts I was having, to all of the trauma that had built up, the unprocessed emotions. I was allergic to everything, including gluten, which made me really sad because I couldn't have my bread, and it was a terrible mess. I was falling apart, and all of that has since been healed. In fact, within the first year and a half of my awakening, completely lost my gluten allergy because I did so much healing in my solar plexus and gut. But we're talking about 2018, and 2018 me was not okay down there in the gut area. I was also having extreme auditory sensitivity, and I was a kindergarten teacher. I thought it was just hell because their little voices are up here, and there were 24 of them, and I loved them. I loved them so much. It was very difficult for me to leave that job, but their voices became just a weapon. It felt like it was a weapon inside my head and it would shoot in like daggers. I was wearing earplugs in my final month of work. And if I could have worn more than earplugs, I would have. My own children were going to the same school that I was going to. So as soon as they were out, they would come into the classroom to start playing. They were in second grade at the time with all the kindergarten toys, and everyone sent their kids to my classroom because it was fun. All the teachers who had kids at that school. So it was the noisiest place. It was the worst possible place for someone who is becoming clairaudient because Something is happening with your ears on a very physical but also energetic and spiritual level. Your inner hearing, your inner ears are going through a change, and mine definitely were. So I'm going to talk about the shower incident now. So the shower incident happened on a Saturday. I might have even been shaving my legs at the time, and I was having some kind of self-talk. You know, the voice in your head that just goes on. It's not something you really notice because it's your own inner voice. I would explain my split in consciousness as all of a sudden there was another voice there that I was hearing just as well as I could hear my inner voice. My inner voice was saying something related to judging my body, and it was doing this in an unconscious way. Just, probably noticing that, there was cellulite on my legs or something, or being ashamed of some part of myself as I was showering. This voice came in and it said, I'm going to paraphrase, said, don't talk about your body that way. Your body is listening and it loves you. Your body is beautiful. Okay. I knew that wasn't me. That wasn't my inner voice, but it was coming from inside me. It wasn't coming from out here. It wasn't like an auditory hallucination. It was inside my head and it felt like it was coming from me, but a nicer version of me, a more loving, kind version of me, almost like I had grown another head on the inside and it was a loving big sister. That's about the closest that I can come to describing that experience. And it happened so fast and so unexpectedly that I got dizzy and almost fell down in the shower. The voice then started streaming in instructions to me, telling me to get out of the shower, turn it off, wrap up in a towel, and go sit on the toilet. It was like having a radio channel be turned on inside my head that I could not turn off, and it was just there suddenly. I was in shock. I was in total shock. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I was really glad that I was in the bathroom alone because one of the main thoughts that I was having was, I'm going crazy. And that thought became a thought form that grew and grew and grew throughout this whole experience, even though that other voice felt so good. That other voice, I know now, had a much higher vibration than me. I called it my angel. It instantly felt angelic to me, at least my version of what an angel would feel like. And so my mind was being changed about all this stuff, and I just started calling it my angel. So I even named it. I called it Beth, B-E-F, and I don't know why. I can't remember why that name came in. But it proceeded to start giving me instructions. And it felt like a very strong, very direct but loving guide that was going to help me get through my day and get through all of it. And it explained to me a little bit about how I was now being guided and that my day was going to be very different than what I had planned. And the voice told me to get myself all ready and that we were going to go drive to Sephora and get this perfume that I had been dreaming about. I had sort of a little mini obsession with perfume sampling. I would get the samples and I just I guess the flower fairy inside myself just wanted to smell everything. I had a subscription on Fragrantica. It's a website all about perfume. And I had been writing reviews and using that as kind of an escapist hobby. Really, this voice kind of coming down and affirming that I should spend money on myself, it felt so different than how I am because I would never have gone out and just bought a bottle of perfume for myself. That seemed really fancy and luxurious. And I'm a very thrifty, conscious, budgetary conscious kind of person. So it already felt like I was being wild that day. Oh my God, we're going to go buy a perfume. Oh my God. So we did that, and it was so strange because the whole time I'm having these conversations inside my head with this wonderful person who loved me and just cared about me and just wanted me to be happy. Okay, that was such a far cry from the really negative, egoic, fearful, judgmental inner voice that I had developed. So in that way, the cracking open and becoming clairaudient was my split in consciousness, where I was now being guided by the part of me who has a much higher vibration. Even though I hadn't fully integrated with it at the time, I was now aware that I wasn't just this little me anymore. It was an expansion in so many more ways than just the clairaudient aspect of it. I now believed in things. I now believed that there was a deeper dimension of things, and I couldn't explain how I was hearing this voice, but I knew it was real, and I knew it was good and benevolent. Memories are starting to surface now about that time in my life that I haven't thought about in years. And I'm not sure what to do with that right now, so I'm going to pause and recollect myself. It's been a little comedy of errors today, so I'm hopping rooms. Um, there's a reason for this. I mean, it's just kind of, it's comical. And I did a whole 18-minute stretch of that was supposed to be like the meat and potatoes, the middle part of this, and it recorded without any sound because I was using a different microphone and it didn't have any juice or whatever. I don't know. There's a reason for this. I did work through a lot of emotions on that one. So I think for this one, I'm going to be able to give it to you more straight without so much emotionality and maybe a little more to the point. Let's hope so. I don't know exactly where I left off, but I'm going to go back to quitting my job. So much shame around that. It was basically the death of an identity for me. So if you've been through an ego death or a dark night of the soul, you know how difficult that is, shedding those identities. So my teacher self, my teacher identity, um, had a lot of mastery and authority and a feeling of being popular and beloved and Mrs. Bathhour. And I left hanging my head in shame because I was falling apart. So I went through all of these emotions during that time. I still had to drive my kids to school. I still had to see all of those people. It was really awful from day to day. I wanted to just run and hide from myself and my life. Yet on the other hand, I was having this huge opening. And I don't know if I spoke about it in the previous one, but I found my spiritual bestie, Michelle, when I went into a sort of a psychic meditation with my guide at the time. She showed me Michelle, just kind of gave me like an imprint, a clairvoyant imprint, and I took a big risk. Michelle answered my call, and we just started on our journey from there. So I was so fortunate to have this soul friend to hold hands with along the way, because I couldn't tell anybody else what I was experiencing without freaking my family out even further. I'm going to go into sort of my visions of working with people in the future. I knew it was going to be some form of hypnotherapy, maybe like soul work. I didn't know what it was. So I started expanding in my meditations. I had a lot of free time. I had a lot of self-healing time, and I would do these meditations a couple times. I left my body, which helped further solidify in my mind, okay, I am not this body. I'm in this body, but when I leave my body, I can still know that my body's there and my consciousness is not my body. That was really important for me. I began working with spirits, and I was very aware of soul fragments of people that were just walking around. I don't know if you want to call those earthbound spirits or ghosts or whatever. The first one was my grandmother, who passed away from Alzheimer's but lived in this house. And I was awakened in the middle of the night, several nights in a row, not knowing what was happening, but having impressions of her. And she ended up being the first of mini spirits that I began doing like a form of a crossover with them. And that became very fulfilling to my soul journey too. And it also helped me open psychically, intuitively, start learning to kind of trust that part of myself that was talking with them on that level of spirit. I got into Dolores Cannon, and if any of you know who she is, then you'll know. And if you don't, maybe you can check her out. So I got into Dolores Cannon and thought that it was the most fascinating thing I'd ever heard of, that you could do these really deep soul based quantum healing regression sessions where people could go back in time, experience past lives. And especially the part that especially nailed it for me was that you could speak to this part of a person's soul, which was called the higher self. In She actually called it the subconscious with a capital S, but it doesn't really matter what you call it. It is this form of the super consciousness or the soul that is sort of your personal God spirit, we'll say. But there are hardly words for these things. I'll probably still use the terminology higher self because that's what everybody is using. So I might as well use a common language. So for my QHHT experience, it started with Dolores Cannon and just connecting with that, knowing that I have to, first of all, I have to have this done on me, and then I have to do this on other people. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. So I sought out a QHHT practitioner. There was one in San Francisco, which was the closest I could find to me. And it was amazing. It was like one of those soul opening things. I sort of I like emotionally met part of my star family. And that was a game changer for me because it added a new depth to my experience as a human here, to know that this isn't all I am and I have been other things, and there is a deeper, more expanded love that I am capable of experiencing that is completely outside of any human experience that I've ever known. And I felt it for just a brief moment in that QHHT session where I was able to eventually go into a deep enough trance for that to be experienced. And I've never been the same since. I didn't think that was me in another dimension. I thought that's someone I love. Maybe that's my twin flame. Maybe that's so I started, of course, externalizing it from a position of separateness, which is kind of what we're doing when we call our higher selves that we're embodying with guides. Now, I might say guides, but what I really mean is it's a soul aspect of myself in another frequency, in another vibration dimension, and they feel separate. They may be in another form, or even in a high enough dimension where they don't have form and it's just uh, an energy or a consciousness coming through. But back then, I felt like I was meeting my soul family and guides, and that is true on some level. So there was a lot of that going on. I had the same kinds of experiences with Metatron, Archangel Michael. They were really more like guides to me, and sort of overarching energies that would come in and help me navigate some of it was kind of disturbing, the kinds of people that I was beginning to work on, because I did get certified in QHHT, but I had a period where I needed to be in an internship and find people who would let me practice it on them for free. And so that's how I met a lot of my soul family that were kind of waiting for me to turn on and light up and get going. And I don't know who I was without them. Honestly, like, I don't know how I survived 43 years, because the age of 43 is when I sort of popped open and had my clairaudient opening. I don't know who I was before that, but I definitely was a shadow of the person I am now, because there just wasn't enough of the conscious me awake inside of myself to fully be as authentic as I am now and attract those people into my life. You have to be doing your soul work, or something that connects with your soul, something that is resonating with you on your higher vibratory level, before you can meet your soul people. There might already be people in your life that are in your soul group. But what I think, and this is just a belief system that I've, I guess, adopted, um, is that the more you are vibrating with your origination point, your higher self, your source self, the more you attract the people who are resonating on that frequency with you. People, situations, opportunities, groups, even like locations that you might be living in. So that's when this was all happening. I was really attracting all of those people. I've got this big star around this thing that I forgot to talk about last time. One of the really strange things that began to happen to me after I popped open clairaudiently was I was being asked to get up in the middle of the night and go outside and just stand there. And then a craft would come. Okay, if you didn't think I was crazy already, you might have to click off at this point. If you're still here with me when I'm talking about my UFO thing, then you're a true blue, okay? You're a soul family for sure. Because I went outside every night. I couldn't ignore it, okay? Like I said, they had the radio frequency. They could just stream in anytime they wanted to. It would wake me up. It's time to go outside, Erin. I had to sneak out of my house. I mean, this was so weird. I felt like a secret agent or something. Like, why am I sneaking out? Maybe I'll get abducted today. I don't know. I even had a little fanny pack all set up with my toothbrush and my deodorant. Yeah, like I was going to go live on a ship overnight or something. I had all kinds of crazy ideas about what might happen when I went out there because there was a craft. Now, it did seem almost like an airplane, but what kind of airplane do you know that just circles around your house like this? Okay, now it was a wide circle, but it wasn't going anywhere. It was just following me. Then I was asked to walk down the street, down the block to the local elementary school, and stand out in the middle of the field, like a totally normal person, and just stand there and look at the UFO. I don't know what I was doing. And I was so upset because they weren't giving me any information about why I needed to do that. Now I have all kinds of theories and I have some idea of what was going on at that time. But I was ready to be beamed up. Like I thought that I was going to get beamed up. Maybe we would go to the moon or something. I don't know. I had been watching Cosmic Disclosure with Corey Good and David Wilcock on Gaia Channel, and all of the stuff that they were disclosing was stuff that blew my mind anyway. So I was already opening up to like whatever possibility. But I couldn't tell anybody about it. I had this really crazy secret that I was secretly going out at night. And sometimes I would just follow it. I would see it up in the sky and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go to like a really distant part of my neighborhood and see if it follows me. And it would follow me. And then at some point in the night, it would just sail off and go away. It never landed. I never got to see it up that close, but it did have 3 lights in a triangle. So I could see 3 lights. And then when it was turned in one direction, green light. When it was turned in another direction, red light. But of course, I couldn't see the form of it. And that was very frustrating for me. And I would get very angry. And inside my head, I was like screaming at my guide, like, this is not fair. This is terrible that you're making me come out here. It's cold. I was just inside my mind kicking and screaming, but I was complying. I had to comply or they would drive me nuts and not let me go to sleep. So that went on for quite some time. And then it got to the point where I didn't have to go out there anymore. Okay. I didn't have to go out there anymore, but I had become so accustomed to it. And I started to think of it as part of my spiritual awakening journey. It was almost a comforting thing. Then I was outside looking for it sometimes. I'd be on a walk with my family and I'd be like, oh, there's my UFO. It had a different blink pattern than any of the other airplanes that you would see in the sky. And unlike the other airplanes that you could see in the sky, it would just make wide circles. My husband could see it. My sons could see it. So I know that it was a physical object that other people are able to see, which really, really helped me because I I did have this fear that maybe other people couldn't see it. It was only in my mind and I was hallucinating. It had even appeared when I was far enough outside of town, like say 45 minutes to an hour away is how far away my folks live. And on Thanksgiving, on our way home, it circled us in the sky all the way home. It was just there. So I haven't seen it in at least 6 months. The visits from that craft are fewer and fewer, far between. It would come during really big energetic openings for me. Like I would accomplish something really big toward my soul path. Like when I opened Healing Journeys, which was my little quantum healing business here in town. And it would like appear there in the sky. And I would imagine that there were like little people inside it going, "Yay, Erin." Because that was the feeling I got from it. I did tune into it psychically many times, and I could only ever get a supportive, lovely feeling from whatever was in there. And I just think maybe that was my star family. Other people have said, "No, Erin, that's a craft. That's one of ours. That's an Earth, space program or something made that." I don't know. And maybe, if anybody has any ideas or comments, you want to throw that down in the comments, theories on what that is. I'd love to hear your take on it. I want to know. It still remains a bit of a mystery, but I have let that part of me that just has to know and demands to know, I've let that part of me rest and just be at peace that it was a really important part of my journey. So my other friend Dale thinks that they were sending me light codes during that time, or seeing, like I was a test subject, just seeing if I was getting these psychic messages enough to be called out there. And I also, if you've had anything like that happen to you, oh my God, that'd be so comforting to know that somebody else out there has had this experience or has seen that craft in particular. 3 lights blinking, kind of slow like that. One side red, one side green, circling slowly. So if you've seen a craft in that pattern, please let me know in the comments. Okay, so lots and lots of soul integration with many different guides. The first guide that showed up for me was in a session where I was doing a quantum healing hypnosis for a friend of mine who allowed me to work out of her crystal shop. Amazing. She is definitely part of my soul journey, and my guide guided me to her the second we met and I talked to her about it. She was like channeling, I was channeling, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this." We had Reiki shares together. Some of her crystal shop clients kind of crossed over and let me work on them with the quantum healing. It was just the perfect merge, symbiotic dance of soul there. So I'm so grateful for that. Her name is Candace, and she and her boyfriend at the time also were Reiki practitioners and crystal people. I mean, they were way into the crystals, and they taught me a lot about crystals, taught me about, where's my crystal skull? Anyway, I got really into crystal skulls, and a crystal skull talked to me when I went to the Cosmic Awakening conference, and I had his voice streaming in through my consciousness as I held this big crystal skull. I don't know if I talked about the Cosmic Awakening conference. For my friend Michelle and I, that was a huge opening. It was in Sedona, and we met so many people that became a big part of our journey. We felt like idiots. We felt like spiritual kindergartners compared to all these really expanded spiritual teachers and channelers, and we just felt like babies. But it was a very good opening experience. It really greased the tracks for some really big expansion. And for us, we started going really fast after that into our spiritual awakening. One big thing I would like to talk about is the meeting of my spirit guide, who is a mantis. So he's mantis, and he came to me with the name Rodney. It's kind of funny because I don't think that's his real name, but he used that for me. He made it more American sounding. And, there is a light language associated with this that I don't know that I've ever showed on this channel. The interesting thing about Rodney is that he came into the room and spoke through the woman who was channeling. I had attuned her. We had done the induction. She was a really good channeler. And her ego was out. I mean, this was a pure channeling. And she said, all of a sudden, there is a large being in the room who would like to talk to you. And I mean, I just froze. Nothing like that had ever happened to me. I had never been addressed by any of the beings that were speaking through the people that were channeling that I had done an induction for. So being personally addressed by something in the room when I wasn't that comfortable with things being in the room, first of all, I didn't know if it was benevolent. I was really scared. I was kind of like, oh, okay, what's happening? And she said he would like to know if he can interact with you. Of course, it was invisible. I could not see anything, but he was speaking through her, and she said he wants to know if you remember him. Can he come into your energy field? And so I said yes. When he entered my energy field, it felt like the vibration was so different from my human body. It felt like I had been turned to stone. It felt like I was a stone statue. And it was almost crushing to my human body. Then Candace Rodney, I'm going to say Rodney because that's the name I eventually got. She said, he wants to know if you remember his name. And I mean, I was like, oh God, I'm going to fail this test. So I just sat there for a minute and I just felt like someone was giving me a warm hug. And the name Rodney popped into my head and I rejected it twice because I thought it can't be Rodney. There's no way because this is not a human. But I couldn't get the name Rodney out of my head. So I said Rodney out loud and she smiled and said yes. So Rodney's here now. Now I have Rodney and I wasn't able to picture him until later. I didn't know that he was that being. All I knew was that he made me feel really good. And she asked if he could stay for a while and help me with the session, and that he would be my teacher for a while and stay with me. And would that be okay? And I was just elated. I had never been directly, you know, addressed by a being in the room like that. And it was so different than like my original Clairaudient opening. It was like, they're here, they're in my field. So he backed off out of my field. It was very almost oppressively crushing to have him in my field, but he stayed for the rest of the session and I just couldn't get over it. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, oh my God. I now know that over the next month or two, I was sort of merging with Rodney. Rodney ended up being like part of my soul that became integrated. And it really did feel almost like a love affair. I thought for a while that maybe he was a twin soul that had been lost. That's how in love with Rodney I felt. And I mistook this for an almost like long lost romance, kind of like, you know, how people get about like, oh, my twin soul. I know there's a lot of stuff about twin souls out there. And I've had people ask me to do sessions on twin soul stuff. And sometimes I just want to go, you miss yourself. This is a big part of yourself that's coming back to you. And you think it's this person. But with Rodney, it really did feel like I was whole when I was with him. And that feeling felt like true love to me. I now know that it was a more expanded love. And I think that he was guiding me into my heart because I was very much up here in my upper chakras in my head. I had to move my consciousness down and down and down. And every soul integration brought me further down into my chakras to fully ground and be anchored in the circuitry of my body. The spirit wants to be in the body, and I know that now. So Rodney was the first one, and then it was a series of other soul integrations after that. This caused tension in my marriage. And this is a part where I don't know how many of you will resonate with this, but I had been married for like 15 years. and we have kids. And I became all about being one with my spirit world. And I had so much going on in my spiritual world, in my interactions with my spiritual counterparts, my soul counterparts that were coming in. And it was like this romance mixed with a reunion, mixed with a whole new crop of friends who are soul family. And all of this really made my husband feel uncomfortable, justifiably uncomfortable, because it was like I was becoming a different person. I still loved him, but there were things in our past that were coming up, unresolved anger and resentments coming up while this was all going on, because your shadow's going to come up. You're going to be forced to heal through things that maybe you haven't been addressing for a while. So we went through about 2 years of marital tension that ended up with us still being together, but it was very difficult for him and for me. I went through a phase where all of the anger that I felt toward him sort of came to a head, and it almost felt like a different aspect of me would light up. Now, it was my pain body coming up for a lot of things that happened. There just was no way for me to heal through it other than to just experience it. And when I would get angry, I would have to stop, go into myself. And what was always behind the anger was intense sadness, a feeling of abandonment, a feeling of rejection. So I basically had to do marriage therapy on myself. I would apologize and say, hey, this is stuff from the past coming up, but I have to deal with it now and in the moment. And it's going to feel like I'm angry at this current version of you, but really, there's a piece of me from the past that did not process her anger and sadness when this actually happened, and I have to process it now. So it was hard for him to understand what I was going through, because he wasn't like active doing his shadow work. I guess he was doing his shadow work through me. He was making strides in his own way. He was having more of an emotional awakening, getting more in touch with himself emotionally, and he was very tolerant of my struggles and very tolerant of my journey. Now he's more supportive than ever. We've come a long way, and the fact that we stayed together is kind of a miracle. So if we can make it through this, I know that others can, but that's not always the case. I've had many clients who just one person is outgrowing the other on one level, and that becomes enough of a struggle for them that they cannot recover and have a peaceful relationship. And that happens for some people too. If you can kind of decide to make your marriage like a spiritual practice of, okay, this person is triggering me. It's not about them. It's about me. That's what my husband and I do now. I feel like it's a very conscious way to maintain your relationship as it ages and as you age. Is if I'm upset right now, it's not about you. It's about me. I go into myself and I address it there. So we have matured a lot spiritually and emotionally together. I'm incredibly grateful, because I know that that's not how it ends for a lot of people who are having spiritual awakenings where their spouse is not also awake. All right. It came through a couple of times in really reliable channelers that I met that I was a way shower, and the Pleiadians loved to use that word. And then I had a dream where a spiritual ascension teacher named Sandra Walter came to me in my dream and said, Erin, you need to take my class. And because I'm really cheap, okay, like I came from poverty and I still have a lot of poverty consciousness. I'm very cheap. I won't spend money on myself. I'm just telling you, that's the truth about me. I'm getting better. But she even said, and I know you have the money. So, oh my God, I was like, she knows that I'm cheap. But, obviously that was her higher self. I didn't quite understand how those messages come through back then. It's like, this is coming through the higher self. And she recommended her way shower class. Now, isn't that a great way to advertise your classes? Just come to people in the dreams. Hey, you need this class. All right. It's only this much money. So she advertised to me through my dreams, and I thought that was kind of funny. I did take her class. Now, I didn't make it through all of the curriculum because I started going into self doubt. But what it did help me do was create sort of a mission statement and connect with my divine service codes. So I do have sort of an encodement as a way shower or divine messenger, whatever it is that I'm doing. And I was able to create kind of a mission statement that to this day, it still resonates, even though I wrote that in early 2019. And so that was really helpful to me. I do still resonate with being a way shower. I mean, I'm not wearing like a way shower t-shirt or anything, but in some ways, I think I have been a way shower for people, at least in my hometown and my community. And maybe now that I'm online, that the frequency will broadcast out. There will be people that hear my light language, that, are taking in some of the guidance that I can give. So in that way, I do believe that it's true. I'm allowing that in now. But at first I was like, no way, this is me. Okay, I'll take the class, but I'm not going to believe it. Now let's talk about entities and growth. I was scared of everything, and I had some big battles with some really big, I'll just call them entities. Maybe they were demons, maybe they were, beings in another realm that somehow I came to grapple with. And it was, some of these were through the clients that came to me that were having major problems with spiritual things. And I would look into it, and we would find something very big and nasty there that was attached to them. Now, that happens to a lot of people because, we are literally in the mix, and we have unhealed parts of ourselves that are attracting low frequencies, and we can be, resonating or vibrating with some stuff that's very fear-based. And then, those entities that thrive on that, they come in, and no judgment on that, but I had to feel like a victim who was being attacked for about 6 months. And Archangel Michael finally stopped coming to my rescue and said, Erin, you need to stand in your light, and I will stand right next to you. So thank you, Archangel Michael. He taught me how to stand in my light. And then my Pleiadian higher self came and stood and really embodied with me and really came through. And I stood up to this huge, very dark entity that everyone else who was psychic could also see. So I knew it was really there, not my imagination. I basically, my Pleiadian higher self walked right up to it and basically dismissed it. Said, okay, we're done with you now. Thank you. You can go. And it was all very love and lighty. It wasn't even judgy. It was like, I could not believe how easy that was. And Archangel Michael's just like, yep, see, you know. But up to that point, I really thought that I was just this little peon, and Archangel Michael was like the big daddy I would have to call in, come, come beat up that boy. He was mean to me. But that's not how it was. Like, he was teaching me to stand in my power, that I am this sovereign soul, and that my soul aspects that can move up into those higher dimensions are so powerful, nothing can touch me. And I have felt pretty untouchable since then in my journey, especially when I integrated with my dragon. There have been some in my Lyran, there have been some aspects of myself that are so powerful and so big and fearless that this journey has changed a lot for me since the days when I was like, Archangel Michael, come get this thing off of, so and so. So I don't have to try to call in the cavalry anymore. I am the cavalry. I am the hands that are going to go in there and help. So also, if someone isn't ready to be liberated from whatever their consciousness thinks is oppressing them, if they are still in victimhood consciousness, they'll stay in there. You can pluck anything off of anyone and send it back to wherever it came from, and it'll come right back as soon as you're not there anymore if that person isn't standing in their light and they are still just an open target. And that's everybody's journey. That is a tough road that no one can walk except you. You have to be the one to walk that road for yourself. No one else can teach you about your sovereignty. People can guide you to it, they can point you to it, but ultimately it has to be you doing your shadow work and liberating the pieces and parts of yourselves that are fearful, disempowered, and otherwise traumatized. That's why we're doing this work. All right. So later on in my journey, I decided I was done with healing journeys the way that I was doing it in my local chapter, physical contact, in an office together. I just felt like that was ending. And I had a big break, a big gap in 2023 after I did ayahuasca. So the ayahuasca experience opened up this new part of me that felt very feminine. It was like my divine mother codes really becoming more embodied. And I had a lot of healing that I needed to do after that. I had lost an ovary in a surgery. Anyway, a lot of healing in my womb area needed to happen. And then my spine had been kind of thrown off kilter because of that big mass being taken out of my body. So I had about 6 to 8 months of really deep sciatic pain, and I had a lot of processing to do on just a physical level. All of that unconscious pain coming up again in like a second death cycle, dark night cycle, where physical pain was my best friend and teacher. It was like pain walked into my life and became another person that I had to hold hands with for 6 to 8 months. In some of those really dark moments of just pain and suffering, that's when I was really merging with the Divine Mother, the Mother God aspect, because I guess I needed that deep, deep pain to find that light. Yeah. So after that, I knew that I needed to do something that was more of a broadcast, that was more maybe working with people online, broadcasting something out. That's kind of how this channel was birthed. That's kind of why I set up a little site that people can work with me online via Zoom. That resonates with me more now, but I did have to go through a little bit of a grief about healing journeys being done. I mean, that was my baby. That was the baby that I birthed in 2019. And it felt like that was dying. And so that part of me also had to go through the death cycle. And now I'm in rebirth. I mean, we're always in all parts of the cycle at all times, different pieces and parts of us, but I feel more of the rebirth now. So light language and tapping stayed with me, and that was toward the end of my healing journey experience. Two of the modalities that I began to use even more than the quantum journeying guidance. I no longer wanted to just put people in a trance and see what came through them. That wasn't as interesting to me anymore as what we could do in real time in a more quantum way with, eye to eye, energy to energy, right now as we're tapping, with the light language coming in and the immediate quantum effects of the light language coming in, and the nervous system resetting itself, and the integration process. So that became more my role, was to, set the vibration, help the person bring their nervous system into a reset, and then deliver the codes. And then after I deliver the codes, then allow for more integration and support the person through what they're experiencing. And that's how I work more now, more as a light code channeler and space holder for people. I feel like that is more aligned with who I am now in this vibration, and a better way for me to be of service to people. We have gone full circle. That message that originally came in at the very beginning of you're going to be gathering a soul family. Now I get it. I wasn't supposed to do it right away. This is a slow process. It's like, you know, the yellow laundry, slow down and wait. I guess that's in part one. So I'm referring to something in part one. Slow down and wait and just let it happen. That's what is happening. A soul family is gathering, and I don't have to do anything to control it. I just have to do what I'm guided to do. I'm still following that. I'm still integrating with higher aspects of myself. It's fun. It's a big party. We're all here. It's me, but it's also we in a more expanded way. I access it all through my heart chakra. This is where I'm at now. I'm still on the path of self healing, but I have freedom from the shame that I used to feel that kept me in a little box. And thank you all for listening. This has been my spiritual awakening journey. I skipped over a bunch of stuff, I'm sure. I mean, you can't tell it all in one day, but that's a synopsis, and it might give you an idea of where I'm at now and the journey I've traveled with myself. I hope that some of this resonated with you. And if it did, leave me a little like or a comment. I'd love to know if anything is similar in your experience. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.